Hello, my name is Carla Gonzalez, and the topic I'll be talking about today is colorism within the Hispanic and Latino communities and how these interactions can influence education level and what other effects can come as a result. So, colorism is defined as a practice of discrimination by which those of a lighter skin tone are treated more favorably than those of a darker skin. For example, those of lighter skin are favored for more jobs or just favored more in general by teachers or by peers. Colorism started very early in America's history during the time of slavery, when lighter skinned slaves were more favored for domestic chores, while darker skinned slaves were more for field work and were working longer and more rigorous hours. But with Hispanic communities, that began in the time of the Spanish colonizers and conquistadors, when they created the caste system, which classified 16 which has 16 different classifications that affected different facets of life from work to social life. And there were many policies in the U.S. that obviously were abolished, such as the brown bag policy that if you were an applicant of color to a job, if you were darker than a paper bag, you were not considered at all. And so moving more to some statistics about the Hispanic community. So 22% of the Hispanic community, 22% of the student population at UF identifies as Hispanic or Latino, which still makes us a minority at a primarily white institution, which I will get to more in a second. And 41% of students report, not at UF specifically, but 41% of students reported discrimination in 2007, and that percentage has raised to 53% in 2018. These students reported higher levels of anxiety, depression, psychological distress, and job satisfaction / underperformance. Since students are already the minority in their predominantly white institutions, they typically feel already isolated and feel the need to assimilate themselves into the grand population, so they tend to try to pass for Caucasian or not refer to themselves as a darker skin tone or associate with people who are of darker skin tone. The kind of irony about the situation is that many Caucasian people will resort to curling their hair to represent natural hair, or will tan themselves and utilize tanning beds in order to have that darker skin tone so they seem more attractive, which is a little bit of, the irony between all this. To my personal life, my grandma she is African American, but she does not identify as such. She is more of like, the brown paper bag color. So and through her education and her development, she was taught that no, she's not dark, she is white. And if you call her white, she actually gets very offended and will, blow up. So, with a case study conducted by Laura Quiros and Beverly Arroyo Dawson in 2013, they followed 8 Caribbean girls and 1 Chicano girl to observe how they were treated due to their skin color, and if they had a privilege or at a disposition, depending on their situations. So, there was a Dominican woman who was a darker skin tone, and she said that she will never identify herself by her skin color, by her race. She solely identifies as Hispanic, and the point being is that whenever she would claim to be either white or black or mixed, people would argue back at her and say that that's not the correct identity, and that wasn't something that she wanted to associate herself with. Some of the social issues that have to do with this issue are the institutionalized racism and the inherent biases that are passed through generation and generation. So, for example, I froze. So, the discrimination that they face is from factors that they cannot control. For example, their upbringing, if it was their socioeconomic status, or if their parents did not have enough money to give them the resources to be well educated, they are already put in a position. So it is a fact that people of lower economic statuses cannot give their children the necessary resources to compete in the modern world, so they're already at a disadvantage, and which puts teachers at the advantage that not the advantage at the that gives teachers the discrimination that these students appear to be less smarter than their lighter skin counterparts, and the level of melanin in their skin determines, unfortunately, it's how our world works. It determines their role in society. And unfortunately, the machine keeps rolling and rolling and keeping the problem alive. And the piece of information I want my classmates to know most about is how prevalent colorism still is, and how institutionalized racism and inherent bias can be passed throughout several generations, and how the best way to stop it is to come pull back and see where these inherent biases are, and kind of catch ourselves and keep educating, calling awareness, so that future generations can kind of change their way of thinking. And the topic that we learned in class that relates mostly to this topic is education, and how marginalized groups start out at disadvantage due to factors that are out of their control. And it's a little bit of a cycle for the rest of their lives. And I would say questions, but this is a recording and there's no people. So thank you. And thank you for a good semester. And